Cross is officially finished, but on the white roads of Siena, Cross's finest still put on a spectacle to behold. Unless you're a Jumbo-Visma rider, in which case you didn't show up. But in the camp of not Jumbo-Visma, we watched Puck Pieterse make her Women's World Tour debut in frankly storming fashion, whilst Tom Pidcock laid down one of his strongest road performances ever. Pidcock's performance felt like a coming-of-age moment, which I know is weird to say of someone who's an Olympic champion, a former world champion, and winner on Alpe d'Huez, but this win felt like a moment he really stamped his authority on a road race, and won by simply beating the very best. A fate that is only a few months away, possibly, for who I really want to talk about today, Puck Pieterse. Strade Bianche was Pieterse's Women's World Tour debut, only really her second proper road race outright after Omloop van het Hageland last week. You wouldn't have thought that she had so little experience though, being one of the leading figures in the race. Whilst Kristen Faulkner was out on her own, Pieterse was one of the instigators of the original divisive split behind. She was joined by royalty such as Annemiek van Vleuten, Lotte Kopecky and Demi Vollering, and in typical Pieterse fashion, she could not be bothered less by the company she was with, taking turns and initiative at the front the whole time, eventually coming home in 6th place, an incredible result for someone so young outright, never mind someone with such little experience as well. So today I want to take a quick dive into who Puck Pieterse is, because if Saturday was anything to go by, this will not be the last we hear of her. Puck Pieterse is from Amersfoort in the Netherlands. Growing up riding bikes with her parents, she'd slowly grow into racing, and by the junior categories she'd place herself amongst the biggest talents domestically, often battling against Shirin van Anrooy and eventually Fem van Empel. 2018 was when we first saw Pieterse race the bigger junior races. At 17 years old she made her debut in elite cyclocross in Gieten, being the 25th and last finisher of that year's opening Super Prestige round. 10 days later in Boom she'd already massively improved on her performance though, finishing 11th. The Under-23 European Championships held in Den Bosch would be the first time Pieterse really rode herself into view, finishing 5th as a first-year Under-23 rider, behind only Dutch trio of Ceylin Del Carmen Alvarado, Inge van der Heijden and Fleur Nagengast, and Czech mountain biker Jana Češinkarova. Her first elite top 10 followed in Hammer, again at 17 years of age, building up to the Under-23 World Championships in Bogenza, a race I will forever refer to as the single most stacked Under-23 race I've ever witnessed. The start list for this race was wild. It included Alvarado, Nagengast, Van der Heijden and Pieterse, but also cross stalwarts Anna Kay, Clara Honsinger, Marion Norbert-Ribarol, road riders such as Yara Kastelein, Blanca Vaz, Sylvia Persico, Shirin van Anrooy and Juliette Labou, and mountain bike duo Madigan Monroe and Nicole Keller. And that's ignoring the likes of Češinkarova, Francesca Baroni and Amandine Fouquenet. By the final lap, the Dutch had broken everybody else. Van der Heijden crowned herself champion ahead of Nagengast and Alvarado, before Sylvia Persico sprinted for 4th. Sound familiar? Pieterse herself had to settle for 5th, beating Anna Kay in the sprint, considering she, along with 16th place Shirin van Anrooy, were the only first years in the top 20. That was again a very impressive result. Throughout the summer, Puck would race mountain bike, crowning herself junior Dutch national champion and taking top 10s at both the European and World Championships. She'd also race her only road race I can find before Hageland, the Dutch Junior Championships, where she'd finish 9th in a small sprint for the win. This all saw Pieterse become strong enough to race elite World Cups the next winter, and her first attempt in Bern wouldn't be hugely successful. She'd finish 30th. A month later came the short double whammy of the Junior European Championships in Silvel and the second World Cup of the year in Tabor. In Italy, Pieterse would romp her way to the European title, the first ever women's junior one, ahead of Olivia Onesti and Van Anrooy. In Czechia, amongst the elites, Pieterse would become amongst the youngest top 10 finishers ever in a World Cup, as she ended up in 9th, beating the likes of Eva Lechner, Inge van der Heijden and Katie Compton. A similar ridiculous performance would be 5th place in Diegem over Christmas. Unfortunately for Pieterse, by the end of the year Van Anrooy would be the stronger of the two, Pieterse settling for 2nd at both the Junior National and World Championships. And then it was 2020, so racing didn't really happen. She still had enough of a season to win a couple of smaller races on the mountain bike and defended a junior national title. She'd also finished third at the Junior European Championships and throughout the winter established herself as regular top 10 material in cross. At the European Championships, again in Den Bosch, she'd swap her Junior European title for the under-23 one, and while she wasn't yet quite at the front, and trust me, everyone knew it was only a matter of time, people were starting to notice one thing about Puck: her technique. Puck Pieterse would become amongst the first women, alongside Manon Bakker, Aniek van Alphen and Anna Kay, who could successfully jump the barriers on the course, saving her an enormous amount of time and working as an effective showcase of her technical superiority. Technical superiority didn't mean too much though during the World Championships in Ostende, or well, it sort of did, but not in the usual way. Pieterse struggled on the day somewhat, finishing 6th as Fem van Empel took the crown. For 2021, Pieterse announced her signature to the new Ciclismo Mundial project, the women's road effort headed by the Roodhoofd brothers that would soon morph into Plantur Pura and now Phoenix de Koning. She'd continue her outings on the mountain bike, but cross would remain her main focus, and during the 2021-2022 season, she'd finish in the top 10 on every single attempt. She'd take her first ever Elite World Cup podium in Overijse, becoming again amongst the youngest people to ever achieve that. She'd also finish second at the Under-23 European Championships, behind Shirin van Anrooy, after a crash on the opening lap saw her pretty much drop to last place. She also finished third overall in the Elite World Cup standings, racking up 6 podium finishes in the process. And in Fayetteville, ready for the World Championships, Pieterse, Van Anrooy and defending champion Van Empel took lumps out of each other, battling hard around the American Raceway, but eventually in a 2-up sprint, Pieterse would get the better of her years-long rival Van Anrooy and crown herself as world champion at any level for the first time. This victory seemingly unlocked even more confidence in the youngster. Throughout the summer, Pieterse and Fayetteville's 4th place finisher Frances Line Burquier would come together to slap around the under-23 category, carving up the majority of the under-23 mountain bike World Cups. Pieterse would also crown herself under-23 European champion, but have to relinquish the world title to Burquier. Burquier, however, is not as much of a feature in cross quite yet, so Pieterse had free reign for the 2022-23 season, right? Well, not quite, as Fem van Empel suddenly became the greatest crosser in the world. Pieterse would be her big rival throughout the year, finishing on the podium every single time she raced, finishing 1st or 2nd on 17 of the 19 races she entered. Amongst her wins would also be the Under-23 European title, 4 Elite World Cups, and the Elite Dutch National Championship. She'd also land herself 2nd at the Elite World Championships in Hoge Heide. And that brings us up to pretty much last month. Since then, Pieterse has done some training, finished 30th at the Hageland, and then in Strade Bianche suddenly was 6th. And that really begs the question, what is Pieterse? What is her future? Where does she go? What does she do? And the answer to that is quite frankly that nobody knows. I don't think Pieterse herself has a clue. But if you held a gun to my head and told me to make a prediction, I'd probably take a look at the career path of Mathieu van der Poel, and I think I'd build from there. Of course, the fact that the two of them share the same team and therefore the same management means that similar philosophies will be at play. They're both quite excitable, flamboyant people as well. They have a similar philosophy to racing. They race more for the fun of racing than as some kind of I must be the best, I must win thing. That sort of comes second, especially in Pieterse's case. The two also share that they are incredibly technically competent. Pieterse is without a doubt the technically best rider at the top end of cyclocross. Mathieu van der Poel was the same. Pieterse is a lover of the mountain bike as well, and of just off-road racing in general, so expect to see her probably focus on that, for the near future at least more so. But we saw the same with Van der Poel. Eventually though, I imagine Pieterse will end up on the road. This Strade Bianche might well be the only World Tour race she races this year, but I think over maybe not even next season, but the year after and the year after, and slowly more and more and more, you will see Pieterse grow out to at least someone who is incredibly competent in the classics. and it would not surprise me if in the near future she becomes one of them complete wildcard riders who just entertains in races like Van der Poel does fairly regularly. The problem though with trying to predict the future career path of someone who does things so entirely based on feeling is that it's incredibly hard to keep a consistent feeling. Feelings change, so do goals. And those goals in the future might well be well different to what they are right now. What this Strade Bianche proved though, at least to me, is that Pieterse is absolutely good enough to find a home at the top end of a Women's World Tour race peloton. She is immensely talented on all three disciplines of cycling, and if the current crop of riders is anything to go by, I think we might well see her right near the very top of all three over the next few years. Of course, with this being so difficult to predict, I'd love to know what other people's views are on the matter. What do you think? Where do you think the future of one of Cross's biggest talents lies? Do you think she'll go to the road? Do you think she'll stick to mountain bike? Where do you think she'll end up? Let me know in the comments below. These types of videos usually get a really good discussion going, so I'm really interested to see what other people have to say. And I know it's the off season, but Cross never quite sleeps, so for any Cross related news, for anything involving these people and their futures, I'll always be making videos, even throughout the summer, so feel free to subscribe, and we'll stay up to date with all the big things happening with all the big names from cyclocross. Thank you for watching.